Step one is to go to one of the bookshelves in your house and just start exploring it. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily look at the things in our house very closely, or we just kind of, there's kind of like visual noise that we ignore. I'm going to grab just some random books. I'm going to get a cookbook. This is a Korean cookbook. I'm going to grab some of my art books. Let's do, we'll do this unknown book, which is Rauschenberg's Sculptures. Rauschenberg was a collage artist, so it's fitting for today. Let's also grab, let's do this Living in the Countryside book. And I want something else. Let's get this 15 by Beverly Cleary. So going through our books, we have Mang Chi's Korean Cooking. We have the Beverly Cleary book 15. We have Living in the Countryside, which is a giant Taschen book. And we have a Rauschenberg sculpture book. So obviously you may not have a bunch of art books in your house, that's fine. Find books with interesting covers. This Beverly Cleary book I don't think is illustrated. I think it might have an illustration or two in it. But I'm more so interested in the cover here, which I think is really great and beautiful. So the Mang Chi book, as I flip through, I think there's some beautiful pictures of food in here. And maybe I can use some of these in my collage. Let's do something like this lettuce. It's a beautiful picture. Living in the Countryside, again, I'm gonna flip through and just find an image that I wanna use. These will be really great background images, I think. Something like this, I think, could really work. And then lastly, this Rauschenberg book, which is gonna have a lot of kind of found objects in it. Things like this that are already kind of isolated. So I'm gonna take one of these. Let's see, I'm kind of digging this. Let's do something really easy. Let's do something that's already isolated. I like that initial piece, so we'll do this. So we're gonna combine all these images. So at this point, I'm gonna pause and take photos of these. I'm gonna take pictures with my phone of each one. And I wanna do it without getting my shadow over the picture. So watch out if you have an overhead light or something like that. So at this stage, I have all of my images copied over to my computer, which if you're using an iPhone, they probably came over as an HEIC photo, which is the iPhone format for taking photos. If you have an Android, they could come over as a PNG or a JPEG or any number of other formats. For us, the problem here is that the software that we're going to use to edit our photos, which could be Photoshop, and I'm going to show you a free alternative called Photopea that's basically the exact same thing, but you don't have to install anything. The problem is that these can't be read by Photopea or Photoshop, so we need to convert them first. The best way to do that is you can just double click to open them in Preview. So Preview is the little photo viewing app. Here's my photo, and I'm going to go File, and we can say Export. And from here, I'll just pick my folder, and I'm going to change it to JPEG. So I'll hit Save, and we're good. I'll do that to my next one as well. File, Export, JPEG. If you want to do multiple at once, we should be able to select multiple, open them up in Preview, select all of them, so I just drag over all of them, and go File, Export Selected Images, and under the options, I pick JPEG. All right, so now I have all of my pictures copied in and good to go. So I'm going to be using Photopea rather than Photoshop. So Photopea is a website that you just visit in any web browser, photopea.com. And whenever you get to it, it looks like this. And it actually will work with basically, just like Photoshop does, but it's completely free. If you make an account, you can save things in the cloud. Otherwise, you can just save them directly from Photopea. So to open up a file, I just click Open from Computer or New Project. I'm going to do a new project actually to start. And my new project, I'm going to make it 1920 by 1080 pixels. I'll give it a name of Collage. The background's going to be white, that's fine, and I'll hit create. So I've created my new Photoshop file, which again, it's photo P, but it's actually a .psd file, so I could open this up in Photoshop just like any other file. So let's bring in some images. To actually bring in some images, we could say File, Open in Place. And Open in Place will ask me, if I go find my pictures, it will open them up and it will pop them into my screen. So from there, I can start placing them. I'm just going to place this one right in the center, and I'll hit Enter on my keyboard to confirm that that's where I want to place it. If I don't hit Enter, it won't actually place it there. So now it's in my file, and I'm going to show you a couple different techniques for isolating this. So I want to cut out all this background gunk. I only really want this image. I'm going to start by zooming in, so I'm going to click my little magnifying glass and just zoom in a bit. And I'm going to click back to my Move tool, which is this top tool. So my toolbar is on the left-hand side, my tool options are on the top, so this is like my specific Move tool, the different options for it. And then on the right-hand side, I have my Layers panel, which is showing me, okay, that's my background, and that's the image I just brought in. So as I move this around with my Move tool, what I want to do is I want to make a selection that only isolates the parts of the image that I actually want. So down here we have these selection tools. So this is a rectangular selection where I could draw a rectangle over the part of the image that I want to select. We also have the lasso tool, which the lasso tool lets me draw organic shapes. So as I draw the shape, it'll select organically that part of it. And then we have this tool right here, which is the object selection, quick selection, and magic wand tool. If I click and hold on that, it'll bring up the different options. And I find the object selection tool in Photopea is really, really powerful. The object selection tool lets you basically, if the object is already kind of isolated, like see it's just like has a white background, if I just draw this over it and release, it should find that object. It might take a second, I'll give it a second. And bam, look at that, it found the object. Now there's a little bit of a mess up here, we can correct that later, but it essentially found the object. So once you have the object selected using whatever tool you'd like, whether that's you zooming in and drawing each line of it, or using another tool, I'd like you to just experiment with this. You can go ahead and click this little guy right here in the bottom right-hand corner, which is add a layer mask, or what they're calling a raster mask in this software. And whenever I click that, once it's selected, so you have those little marching ants around it, once I click that, it's going to isolate that from the background. So now I just have that image. It's isolated. Let me zoom out. So I'll click my zoom. I'll click this little minus. So now I have this isolated, and it can go on top of anything else. Now the reason I click that little raster mask rather than me manually erasing is because this is a dynamically adjustable thing. So I could go in here and edit this at any time, and if I wanted to just delete it, this little black layer right here, I can just say disable raster mask and it goes away. If I right click and say enable raster mask, it comes back. So I've just masked out my first element. Let's file, open, and place another one. Let's pick the Beverly Cleary book. The Beverly Cleary book is in. Remember, I need to hit return once I have it placed. And I'm going to, this time my object selection tool probably won't work because what I really want is just like her face. I'll go ahead and just go back to select, deselect so that all the marching ants are gone. And maybe this one I'll just manually use either my lasso or even a magnetic lasso might work, but I want you to just play with these and see what it's like. So I'm just going to kind of draw a shape and I'll just sort of get her face. It's going to be really rough and that's okay. I'll show you how to kind of fix that later. So I drew the face selection. It's going to take a second to grab it. All right, it grabbed it. All right, so we have our selection. I'm just going to hit the mask button so it masks it out. And I'm going to talk about editing this, so fixing some of these little edges and stuff and problems that we have. So with this selected, over here on the layers panel, you can see, okay, there's basically there's the layer itself, that's the image, and then there's what's called the layer mask, which is this part of it. So that layer mask is a black and white image that basically the black areas of it are hidden, okay, and the white areas are what's shown. So if I take like a regular paintbrush over here and I have black selected, and you can see what's happening is even though I'm painting with black, what I'm actually doing is hiding part of the layer below. So I'm hiding this layer. If I switch to white, so if I click the little color picker, switch it to white and say OK, I'm revealing the layer below. See how I'm doing that? So what I could do is I can manually come in here and sort of actively choose, pick and choose, and kind of paint what I want to be seen and what I don't want to be seen. All right, so once I'm happy with my selection, which I might play with this a little bit more, I'm just going to zoom back out. So I'll grab my zoom tool, I'll hit the minus, and I'll zoom out. I can start using that move tool, grab my image, and move that around. So I can start making some interesting compositions with it. I'm going to bring in another image, so I'll do open in place. Let's bring in our background now, which I think is this one. Maybe this one's a little bit better. Yeah, we'll do this one. And I can scale this up and down right now. So we make this big. But oh no, notice that if I hit return, my picture is bigger than my other, it's on top of my other two layers, right? Like it's almost like hiding the other two layers. So what if I dragged this above? So what you can tell is that these layers basically are ordered from bottom to the top. These are like sheets of paper. So this is your background, this is your next layer, this is the next layer, and this is the next layer. The little eyeball turns them on and off. So I can start arranging these on top of each other using the move tool, kind of making the composition that I want. Now there's lots of other adjustments you can make. I'm not going to show all of them here. I'll show you a couple though. For example, I could add a vignetting effect using a kind of using a gradient, producing some different effects that could be kind of interesting. Oh, let me undo that. That's the wrong direction. So I could create a vignette like this, change this to overlay. There's lots of different cool effects that you could work with and create the look that you want. But I want you to just tinker with this and explore this. So Photopea is completely free. It works better on a browser not like Safari, like on Chrome or Firefox. But if you have Photoshop on your computer, it's exactly the same. All the things are the same. They're called the same things. And you don't need to worry about them too much. So basically, the two softwares are almost exactly the same. Don't worry about it, but this one's free, so that's why I'm showing it to you for those of you that don't have Photoshop installed on your computer. Once you're finished, I want you to save out an image. You can go File, Export as JPEG, and just save that JPEG. Say Allow, and it'll download it, and now you have your collage downloaded, and you can post this in our Google Classroom.